I need to make sure these things come through. Sorry.
It's okay.
It's like, it's been a day.
I feel you.
Did you run this morning?
I did. I didn't really want to because I didn't get much sleep last night, but I knew I needed it. So
yeah, I saw your story talking about the storms. We can talk about that once I actually get it started. But, all right, let's take 2 of Jonathan not paying attention.
This time.
Welcome to Run with Purpose. This is episode number 98. And for those of you that are new to the show, my name is Flores, and I'm so very glad that you found this podcast. Would love if you would subscribe. And as always, you reach out to me on all the socials at flores.run. Today, we have a cool guest. I'm super excited to have her on the show today. As you guys know, I tend to stalk people on Instagram and I find people with cool stories and then I have conversations with them, and this is no exception. So her reels and kind of her content that she does on Instagram like make me laugh, make me smile, kind of make you think a little bit as well. So it's super exciting to have her on the show. Thanks for joining me today, Morgan.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm so excited.
Yeah, it should be a great time. Before we get started into this, how can people connect with you if they want to do that after listening to you today?
Yeah, I am mostly just on Instagram right now. So my Instagram name is Miles Through Motherhood. And yeah, I just post on there. So
Sweet. And we'll have all of Morgan's information in the show notes so you can kind of click that, make it easier so you don't have to write it down. But yeah, I'm excited kind of to talk through some of the things that we were talking about before we started recording. But maybe we can just get started, let the folks know a little bit about yourself, and we can kind of jump from there.
Yeah. So I am a mom and a wife. I have 3 kids. I live in Michigan. I just started running about 2 years ago. I am a stay-at-home mom. So yeah, running's been my sanity the last few years. It's super important to me, but yeah, that's pretty much me in a nutshell.
Sweet. What kind of, like, this is not obviously what we were talking about, but what kind of got you started into running? Like why running?
Yeah, that's a great question because I hated running. I was one of those people. I actually had like horrible memories of it from all the way back to elementary school. I have like a fond memory of we had like a race track day or whatever in like 4th grade. And I signed up for the mile, not realizing what it was. And I was like the last person and I was devastated. And I was like, this is the worst thing I've ever done. And it was so embarrassing. And then in high school, whenever I did sports and we'd have to run, I was like always last, like struggled to finish. It was awful. So fast forward to 2020, I had my son in 2018. And then I actually got pregnant again within the first year of his life. And so I had 2 kids within 12 months.
Wow.
Yeah. And when 2020 hit, I just felt like I had 2 kids that were under, they were both like a year and like a newborn. And I just needed something for myself. So I just started walking I got a treadmill and I just started walking for alone time. And then eventually I was like, well, I really like walking and this has been really good for me. And I just started kind of like running. And then it just took off from there. I just loved it. I loved having the alone time. I loved being able to like clear my mind. And then obviously 2020 turned out to be what it was. And I needed that even more because I was stuck at home with the kids 24/7, 7 days a week. And I needed the time to get outside and just be able to refresh, to show up for them in a better way. So yeah, that's kind of how that all happened.
Nice. And I like that. I like that idea too of like, you said there at the end of like using it as almost like a refresh. like being able to separate. It's like, obviously you love your kids, but sometimes you just want to backhand them. I get it.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, and that's why I need running. I need that.
Yeah. And it's like, it's this idea, especially, 2020 and everything that happened there, it kind of shifted our mindset, right? Of kind of like how we do those kinds of things. So it's interesting that kind of helped with your refresh. I'm the same kind of way. I started running a little over a decade ago now. I was telling someone and it really turned into, I needed something cheaper than golf because golf was so expensive in the Midwest. And I was just like, maybe I'll pick up this like running thing. It seems like, I was like, it's definitely going to be cheaper than golf. And that has not been the case at all. But with the kind of the sanity and the refreshing piece, how did you kind of, was there like a time that you almost had to make that transition from the walking into the running or calling yourself a runner? Because obviously you created this Instagram account to kind of like document this piece. And obviously the name of it itself is showing kind of this journey in it. So I'd love to learn a little bit more about like your thought process behind doing that.
Yeah. When I became a mom, my whole life, my dream was to be a mom and a stay-at-home mom. And when I did that, I realized it was my whole identity. Like being a mom was my everything. And I ended up with postpartum depression and anxiety. And after having 2 kids back to back, I realized that having my entire identity as a mom, I needed something else and I needed to find that outlet. So when I started walking and then eventually started to be like, I think I could start running a little bit, it became this shift that I could have a different identity outside of motherhood. And I think I really grasped onto that. And I found the running community. And I realized that, to fall in love with running, you kind of have to take on the identity of a runner. And you get so involved in the community and like obsessive almost that, you know what I mean? Like, yeah. And so I just kind of fell, in love with it. And I think I called myself a runner like a lot earlier than other people do. I know a lot of people struggle like to call themselves a runner, but I think I needed that identity outside of motherhood so bad that I was so happy to find something that I was excited to call myself a runner and have something like other than motherhood. And that was me, Yeah,
because I think that's something that a lot of folks struggle with, not even just moms in that situation. I know that's an extra layer of it as well because of the time and that sort of thing, especially being a stay-at-home mom. Like, we say it all the time. My wife is a nanny and helps out with 4 kids.
Oh, wow.
And she's like, I don't know how people can just do this. Like, she's like, I'm doing it to help out a friend. She goes, but I couldn't just do all of this. And
mentally and physically.
Just all of it. Just like, this is exhausting. But this idea of understanding that your identity was kind of wrapped up in this thing. And you kind of had this epiphany, if you will, of like saying, hey, I need to separate from that. Because I think it's interesting too. You said that you kind of called yourself a runner earlier than a lot of people would because you just needed to kind of separate from it.
Yep. And I think running gave me that opportunity. And I think another thing is that, as moms and things, a lot of times we feel like a lot of mom guilt, like you have to just be, mom is your whole world. Like you can't have an identity outside of motherhood. And I think I was so, happy to have something outside of that running was that for me. So it's just like, I was happy to take on that like identity as a runner and things, So yeah, I just think there's a lot of pressure on moms to like just have their whole identity be motherhood. And so running really helped me realize that there were other, things out there for me that brought me joy and helped me be a better person. So
yeah. How do you balance that? Like, obviously there's a time aspect of just the amount of time that kids themselves take, but also in that identity piece, you made a good point of a lot of times moms feel like if they're not there 100%, that they're like failing as a mother or like taking care of the house kind of thing. How do you balance that? Not necessarily just like time wise, but in your head as well, understanding that like you need those 2 different aspects or avenues.
Yeah. And that was honestly one of the hardest that was the hardest part, I think, is when I first started taking that time for myself, there was a lot of guilt there and a lot of like, well, I should be devoting all my time to them. Or like, even now, if I leave for a run on a Saturday morning and my kids are crying and not wanting me to go, it's hard, and it's hard not to feel bad. And even asking my husband to like, well, I'm going to leave for 2 hours, like, have fun, good luck. Like, you know what I mean? Like, that's like, I feel bad, but then I have to remind myself, and my husband will remind me, like, you're doing this and this is going to benefit all of us, like this benefits you, which if you're not happy, no one's happy. So, and I honestly, I've said this before, on the days that I run, like on a day like today where I got up and I ran before my kids woke up, it's the day goes so different. It's like I am more playful with my kids. I'm more present with my kids. So I think the balance of it is just knowing that it's okay to take that time for yourself, because you're not the only one benefiting from it. And, I think it can be even tougher for moms that work outside of the home, because, they're gone all day and then they want to get home and spend time with their kids, but they also do need that alone time too, And so that can be tough too. That's a whole nother like layer for them. And, but yeah, I think we just have to remember that when we're taking that time, it benefits everyone. And, the balance is tough, but if it's a little off sometimes, that's okay too. So.
Yeah, I think that being present is so very important, not only for the aspect, like you said, you just show up better, but it's almost that like intentionality piece of it, right? Like you're doing this on purpose because you understand that taking these steps are going to kind of get you into a place that you want to be, that's better for your family as well. And I think it sets a great example for your kids as well, right? Of showing, being able to like, hey, you don't have to be all of one thing. Like we can do multiple things, and you don't have to be, just because someone else put a label on you doesn't mean that that's all you are.
Right. Yeah. And I think like you said, it's just such a great example for your kids. And I think when I was younger, I always thought like, well, a good mom is a mom that only devotes all her time to her kids, or doesn't have anything outside of motherhood, and just shows up for their kids 24/7, and like wouldn't go out for a run if their kids didn't want them to. And now I know that I'm showing my kids what self-love looks like for me, and that's going to show them how to take care of themselves and put themselves first, so they can give them their own self-love, so that when they're older, they know that they can take time for themselves and not feel bad about it.
Yeah. So. That's so good. I'm not going to ask you how old you are. I think I'm older than you, but we might be in a similar age.
You can ask. I don't mind.
How old are you? Sorry.
I just turned 28 in May.
So we're not at all anywhere on the same age. My apologies. I just made you old.
That's
and
okay.
You didn't need to be.
Well, the 3 kids really ages me.
Yeah.
I mean,
I didn't say you looked old. Let's back. I'm just going to dig the hole. Up. Just dig the hole deeper.
No. I like that, because usually people are like, oh, are you like the babysitter? And I'm like, no, these are mine. Like, so that's actually a compliment, really.
That's funny. But like, so I turned 35 this Thursday in 2 days. My birthday's in 2 days. That's funny.
Happy birthday.
Thanks. It'll be.
Wait, that's my son's birthday too. Is there you the 14th?
The 14th. Yeah.
Yeah, that's my son's birthday. Look at you. That's awesome.
My sister-in-law is expecting, and we're waiting for the call any day now. Her due date is the 14th. So we're trying to like push her. It's a good day. It's a really great day.
It is.
Tell your son happy birthday on the Thursday.
Thank you.
But this, I don't know where I was going to say. Oh, this like the generation, so like my kind of age group generation, you probably were kind of wrapped into that as well, is this idea of you had to kind of roll with that purpose, and you were all about how are you helping only others and not really worried about yourself. Like give your all, like you gotta like pour. And then we kind of forget to fill. So it's almost that like the opposite of what they think millennials are. I think a lot of millennials are, we have just been told we need to continue to pour. And now we're just like, wait a second, what about me? Yeah. And that's what we're seeing like Gen Z and going forward is we're not spending that time, even from like a mental health aspect of understanding that you also need to like help yourself. I've used this analogy like probably a gazillion times on the podcast is, you're on a flight and they tell you that you have to put your mask on before you can help someone else. And it's crazy how so many people just go through life just giving which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but not realizing that if you're not full, you're not going to be able to get all of your fulfillment by helping others. There has to be some additional piece for you to kind of, I don't know, almost like to get you out of bed in the morning.
Yep. Yeah. And that was part of it for me too, is when I was going through like the postpartum depression and things and had 2 young kids at home and it was a pandemic. Running, I started a half marathon training program, and that having that goal and proving to myself run after run that I could show up for myself and that I was, it taught me how to trust myself again. You know what I mean? Like I knew that if I set a goal, I was going to do it and I was going to show up, and it gave me that motivation to get up every day. And then it helped, and then it just trickled into other areas. Like motherhood just became not easier, but it became something that I was excited about again and things,
Yeah. And I was going to ask that because you made a mention of like setting the goal to help you kind of see that piece. Did you see a lot of correlation to as you started to, because obviously it takes a ton of discipline to run any distance of a race, and half marathons aren't just walks in the park. So from that, did you see kind of things carry over from that training program into like just day-to-day life?
Oh my gosh. Running is in every aspect of my life at this point. I mean, I like think the crossover between like being able to get through a hard run and getting through a hard day with my kids is like the same, I mean, like the mental toughness and things is there. I mean, I learned so much through running that I can carry on as a parent and as a wife. And it's been everything. I mean, it's changed every aspect of my life. If you ask people that knew me before I started running, like who I am now, they're 2 different people. I mean, I was a very negative, very, I just looked at the negative side of things a lot. And now with running, I feel like it's taught me to kind of embrace the journey and embrace the hard days and know that it's all part of the process. And it gives me a more positive like outlook on things.
Gosh, I can't I can't write my notes fast enough.
I have a lot to say on this.
I kind of want to unpack that even more because I think the journey piece is always something that I try to convey to people, because running was the same thing for me. Obviously it came as I needed a physical activity to do, but I grew up playing baseball. So like running was the last thing that I ever wanted to do. And I always talk about like not focusing on the end goal per se, but kind of focusing on that journey piece. I'd love to hear more about kind of how like your mindset in that.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I mean, I look back at that first half marathon training cycle. That was summer of 2020. And it was like the best time of my life. Like I was just having so much fun with training. I just loved it. It was so much fun for me to just like put my all into the training. And like, yes, the finish line and finishing that half marathon was amazing, but that was nothing compared to just the entire journey itself. And seeing, like when I first looked at that training and I saw that I was going to run 8 miles or 10 miles, I was like, there's no way. Like I can't, there's no way. And then as I started to tick off those miles, that's where like the real like growth came from. I mean, the journey is the most important part, right? I mean, it's just a victory lap at the end, I mean, that's where the real good stuff comes from.
I think it's so true because I've helped kind of, I would say train, I've helped coach some people into running their first half marathon or marathon. And I try to put that all the time is focus on every single week of your doing the training. And then the race week, obviously we all have goals. We have time goals sometimes. We have these kinds of things or effort goals, but don't put too much into that because you might fail at that. And you don't want to ruin your entire experience because of that piece. So it's understanding kind of how you grew through that entire thing to then say, okay, I can see a difference here. Like you said, the idea of going from like being a more negative kind of person and maybe seeing those things in that light to then going, hey, it kind of running helped change my mindset and understanding about the journey, which then obviously equates to everything in the family as well.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And it's just like, I just feel like the journey is like it's the good stuff, right? I mean, it's where you grow, and it's the end of it's great, but it's like, that's the whole point, is just those runs that are good, the runs that are bad. I mean, it's all part of the process. So yeah, that's the best part.
Yeah. I'm a special kind of stupid is what I like to say. And I'm on a journey right now. I'm running the day of the month up until my birthday. I used to run my age every single year. I started when I was 30, running my age. And then when we moved out here, I don't have a lot of friends out here. So usually it was like a group thing. We'd get some buddies go, we'd stop at breweries. It'd be a fun day.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I was like, I don't want to do that by myself. That seems kind of lame.
Yeah.
Running 35 miles by yourself is
not as fun.
It does not sound fun. So I've been running the day. So today I had 12.
Oh, fun.
And yesterday I was just like dead. Like I did my 11. I felt like absolute garbage.
Yeah, that's a lot. Yeah.
Today it may have been the caffeine that helped, but I had a decent run. But this idea of kind of pushing limits to kind of help with that journey aspect. So in kind of along these lines, I'm always curious on people that start running and do like a half marathon or marathon, and they decide to do another one. Like what? It's just probably the same thing as I have one kid and why do I want a second one?
That is so true.
Or in your case, you had two and then you decided to have a third.
That's the best way I've ever heard someone say that. Yeah, that is very true.
So kind of what kind of, I'm curious on like your mindset of why you decided to continue that piece of it. Like what what clicked to say, you know what? Yeah, I'm going to keep doing this.
Yeah, this is for me. Yeah. So I was just thinking about this. What's interesting about me is I know a lot of people put a lot, like we were talking about the journey and things. And for me, like I have always felt like running is the one thing in my life that I don't take that seriously. Like I have goals and I've always like made goals for my every race I've done. And I obviously want to improve as a runner, but I don't put a lot of pressure on myself, like on races and things. And like, if I don't hit the goal that I like exactly wanted, I don't feel that bad about it. And I haven't done a ton of races, but again, it goes back to the whole journey thing. Like I'm just so happy and proud of myself for finishing an entire training cycle that I'm like, yeah, that's great. Like it's like unfortunate, but like I just ran a half marathon. Like I don't want to lose. I never want to lose sight on like that. Just a couple of years ago, I couldn't even hardly walk a mile. You know what I mean? Like, so for me, it's just like, I just feel like I did that first half marathon and I knew I wanted to keep going because it was just such a fun part of life for me that was bringing so much joy, and I didn't put a lot of pressure on myself and things. And I just felt so accomplished. And there's not that many things in life that you set out and you can clearly say like, I accomplished this goal. And it just felt so good to be able to do that. And so yeah, it was never really a question for me whether or not I was going to do another. I just knew I was going to keep going. And even now I did the one in 2020 and I've done 2 this year. And it's like, now it's just like part of who I am. It's part of my identity now.
Yeah. I love that concept. And I wonder if how we could kind of use that concept in other areas of life of not necessarily taking things too seriously. Like just stop taking life so seriously. I think there's certain pieces like we talk about like faith and that sort of thing. There's obviously ways that we want to kind of approach those things and ways that we want to live. But I think it's when we take things too seriously, we're putting too much attention on things that may not need it, right? Like this isn't that important. Why are we going crazy after it? Yep.
And that's exactly it for me because I am someone with pretty high anxiety. I'm an overthinker. I mean, any little detail of life, I will overthink. Like what color shoes are my kids going to wear? I will overthink it. And running honestly taught me, like it brought out this side of me that I didn't realize was there, where it was like, this isn't that serious. Like just have fun with it and just like enjoy it. Like nothing bad is going to happen if you choose one or the other. Just enjoy it and don't take it too serious. And that's why I just like, running's just in this like Instagram has been so fun for me because it's just a fun outlet. Like running's just like that. It brings out that side of me that's just lighthearted and, embraces the good and the bad and, that type of thing.
Yeah. And I think I love it too, because like seeing the stuff that you post, it's simple, but it's just funny. It kind of just like hits the point where you're just like, yeah, this is how running makes me feel, or these are the things that happen. And I think that concept to me, I think the simplicity of all of that really nails the message behind everything that's kind of going on, is understanding like, yes, it's important to me. Obviously, like my family's important, running's important. Those things are important to me, but I understand if I over focus on those individual pieces, I'm not really doing anyone any benefit.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Like, I just don't ever want to get so wrapped up in it that it takes the joy from it. You know, you see that all the time with runners where it's like they go out for a run and they don't hit the paces they want or something. And then it's just like they're in a bad mood. And it's like, I understand that. And like, I get like, you want to like hit those goals and things. But for me, it's just more, I just want to be thankful that I'm even out there, you know, because again, I remember a time where this wasn't my reality and I wasn't running and things. And I didn't know how special this was, you know? So
that's definitely a sentiment I have as well, is like just being thankful for every step that I've been able to take in this journey of me running across the country and stuff. It's like, there's a lot that could have happened. Yeah. When I was in high school playing baseball, I had to stop playing because I had water in my knees, and they're like, hey, you're probably never going to be able to like do real impact stuff ever again. And this is sophomore year of high school.
Right. Yeah. It's like,
you're like, well, that's great.
That's the rest of my life.
You're like, that's perfect. Good to know that now.
Right.
And then, you know, fast forward, I don't know, a decade. Gosh, I'm old. Fast forward like a decade, you know, and then I'm now, that's like the thing I do. Like, I'm running. Yeah. That would have been 2003.
Okay.
So 2 decades. Yeah. Getting real old. But yeah, you're like, it's you fast forward to that and then realize like, wait a second, I am grateful that I have the opportunity to do what I can do. And I'm not going to take anything for granted, because it could be taken away from me at any point in time. I had a buddy that, unfortunately, a real good runner. He was working on, I think he was trying to run 2,000 miles in a year. I feel like it was in 2020, or it may have been the end of last year. Okay. Literally with a couple weeks left in the year, got hit by a car.
Oh my God.
So it would have been 2020, the end of 2020. Wow. Got hit by a car, and now he may not ever be able to run again. Like he's doing like, he did like a 5K where he's trying to like, he can get kind of through it. But it's like, you think about those instances and you're like,
you never know. Yeah, exactly. That's why it's like, you know, I like this morning, I was supposed to run a certain mile, like I was supposed to run a certain amount of miles, and I couldn't fit it in. And I could see where people like get frustrated or like, oh, I didn't get all these miles in. And it's like, okay, but like, I should just be grateful that I'm even out there, or that I was even able to do like the miles that I could do, because a lot of times like a lot of people can't, or I couldn't years ago, you know? So you just have to keep it in perspective. And like we talked about, you know, just be grateful and, you know, just remember like your why you even started in the first place.
Yes. We'll talk about that here in a second. Everyone else that's listening, we have to restart Zoom. So sorry, if you're not watching the video, we're going to have to restart the Zoom, and we'll be right back. Okay. Let's see how this works though. All right. Well, welcome back, everybody else. On the audio, they're going to be like, I'm very confused. But anyway, it spliced up very nicely.
Just a nice little intermission.
So you made a good kind of point there at the end, is this idea of like knowing your why. And I think that helps when we kind of talk about this idea of identity, is we can kind of get wrapped up in almost flipping them, right? Instead of understanding our why and guiding our identity towards our why, we have an identity maybe placed on us, and then that identity determines our why, or why we think that's our identity. Yeah. Kind of, I'm curious on your thoughts on that process of one being in front of the other and how it can kind of guide it.
Yeah, I think I go back to my why a lot, and I think that really helps me stay with my identity as a runner. But I don't think I get too wrapped up in like, oh, I'm a runner, so I should be doing this and this and this. Like, I'm just like, no, my why is to be able to show up for my kids, show up for myself, fill my own cup up, find my own like joy. And then because that's running, I'm a runner.
Yeah.
Like, because that's what brings me joy. That's why I'm a runner. It's not because I'm a runner and then all those other things.
Right. And I think you bring up a good point there too, is we're using, like, sometimes we talk about the things that we do and then we assign identity to that. Because I would say, like, in your case, you're not, your identity isn't a runner per se, but you are a runner, but you don't, that's not kind of where you put all of your hopes, dreams, admiration, all of those things aren't sitting in that. And I think what we can get into a dangerous place is when we, to your point, we say, hey, I'm a runner, so I need to be doing these things. You know, I'm not growing in this piece, so I'm now failing in life because the only thing that matters in my life is this piece that I'm basically identifying with. And if you take that away, and I think that's probably where the identity comes into issue is, to me, when you think about identity, is if I take that thing away, what are you left with? And to me, if it's a hobby, I don't know if your identity, because if you take that away and you have nothing, well, then you're not kind of on a solid rock, if you will.
Exactly. Well, and like, you can even relate that again back to like the whole motherhood thing. It's like, if we wrap our entire identity up in motherhood and go through the entire years raising kids, and then once your kids are out of the house and you aren't in that constant raising them stage, and you look around and you're like, well, who am I? Like, what do I like to do? Who am I outside of this one identity that I put on myself, or that I thought I was, and I think, like you said, like you can't put your hobby, like you can't have your hobby be your entire identity, because the things can get taken away from you. I mean, anything can get taken away from you, and then who are you? Right.
This idea, I mean, you see it with marriages and families and that sort of thing, is, kids grow up and they get out of the house, and you're like, who are we? Who is this piece of it, where you're like, you wrapped everything in there, which, again, no problem loving children. But at the same point in time, it's understanding that balance of when this ends, because this season will end.
Right. Yep.
I know my mom probably won't listen to this but it's the same kind of, like, I have that conversation, like, with my mom of her identity was in my brother and myself. And then it got to a point where we didn't need her support anymore. Like I said, I'm 35, my brother's 33. So it's like, we don't need that support. He needs a little more because he has 4 kids now. But it's almost the feeling of, if I don't have like a purpose in this, then what's my purpose at all? And I think that's where we get into that weird piece with identity.
Yep. And I think that's, we talked about your mom, and I had a similar upbringing. Like, my mom is my best friend. She's amazing. She was like the most amazing mom, and we're really close now. And the thing is that she saw that she didn't like have things for herself growing up and things. And now she encourages me as a mom. She's like, no, you have to run. Like, you have to stick with these things that make you outside of motherhood and things. And like, I think that's amazing that she's encouraging me to like do these things outside of motherhood, because she sees how important it is at the stage of life that she's in. Because like you said, these seasons it's just a season, like you have to be able to grow in those seasons and know that they're going to change eventually.
Right. Yeah. Things continue to change. We continue to grow and kind of evolve. And those things that were important to us at one point in time aren't important to us anymore, whether that's good, bad, or indifferent in that piece.
Yeah. Yep.
Interesting.
Yeah.
There's just so much wrapped up into it, I think, of we think about like raising kids and stuff like that. I don't have kids. We're not having kids. So I'm probably not the expert in this. You would be more than me. But this idea of we want our kids to kind of find their way, but at the same point in time, we don't want to get them like stuck in their way. Right. Like, I think we see so many people now that, I think the generations before we may have seen this as well, is, hey, I didn't have, so I want my kids to have, which again, nothing wrong with that. But then it kind of goes into the flip end of, you think about, I don't know if they still have these things like toddlers and tiaras, or these like those kind of things where it's like,
I don't know if they do.
You're now, that's again, we're going to age myself.
Yeah.
You're going to have these like, I'm putting my hopes and dreams and aspirations into you and kind of living through your piece since I couldn't do that.
Yeah.
And then again, it wraps into a weird piece where then we're basically telling this generation that like your identity has to be this, because if you don't do it, you're not only failing yourself, you're failing whoever kind of put you in that situation.
Right. Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's like you can't, it's like you can't just like wrap yourself into all of that, you know? And yeah.
Yeah. It's an interesting piece.
It's a lot.
Yeah. Well, because we as a society and culture, especially nowadays, like a lot of times identities or labels, if we want to think about it in that kind of way, which same, but different, I guess. But
yeah,
we can get wrapped into a type of label based off of what people think of us, what they see on the outside. I mean, social media is obviously a big premise of that. You know, you make reels and you do these things. So you're a little more in the forefront than most. And you probably see it too, is you just have to deal with certain people making judgments or saying things and doing things based off of like, hey, I am now labeling you as this because you're doing this. Cause I'm sure you hear things about maybe other people trying to say that, you know, you need to be with your kids more. You need to do these things more, where it's like, why are you running and why are you making these reels? Why aren't you spending time with your kids?
Yeah. And people do say stuff like that. And like we talked about earlier, you know, like that's where the mom guilt comes from. You know, that's where moms feel like, well, maybe I shouldn't be taking this time for myself, or maybe I shouldn't, you know, be, you know, running or whatever your hobby is. And it's like, well, you can't just put that on, you can't just like make someone be just one thing, you know, people are lots of different things. And if you see something on social media, you're not getting the whole picture, you know, you're not getting the entire story of someone. You have to remember that, like, you know, you only see like 10 seconds of someone's life and like make a huge assumption about like who they are, how they're spending their time or whatever. Like you can't do that. For
sure. Well, I think we covered a lot here. There's so many different pieces, and I feel like we could probably talk for a while about this, just because I think it is a super important topic of understanding, not wrapping your identity in a single thing, or in the flip side of letting other people kind of identify you or label you in that individual piece. So thanks so much for being on the show today. Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you for having me. Yeah, so much fun. I'm glad you had fun, technical difficulties and all. Oh, you have to every time, right? Yeah. It's just how it would be too easy if it worked the way it should every time. Yes, exactly. Everyone else, I'll have all of Morgan's information in the show notes so you can connect with her. Again, thank you so much for being on the show. Yeah, thank you so much. All right. Where's the rest of my stuff I got to say? I know the notes are here somewhere. Remember, you can follow me on social media everywhere at flores.run. Visit the website, flores.run. Hangry Gear. You can buy your Hangry Gear. wearehangry.com. Where's the picture? There it is. You can see me on social media. Have a great day. Keep running with purpose, one step at a time. See you next week. Bye.